Here we are. Welcome to another episode of Common Ground. It's the 27th of July. Gavin Callahan, how are you?
I'm very well, Charlie boy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying the weather. I'm enjoying the fact that we've got nice places to go in our borough. I spent most of my day in David Lloyd's, which was very nice. Um, I won't ask what you were doing because I'm sure it was pugged up in a very hot and sweaty cafe talking to residents as you've been doing. How's that going?
I actually had two really good conversations today. Very
Ah,
different, very different. But I one of them with an older lady. I have to say, I think it was one of my favourite conversations I've had so far. So it's been a good few days. I was explaining to you earlier on as well. I spent my weekend. I bought a fish tank and I've bought some fish. So uh, I'm heading towards middle age, trying to be a calmer, less grey uh, individual, and I'm led to believe that having fish calms you down.
okay. So what fish have you got?
I don't
Do you
know.
know? You
They're
don't know?
they're
Did you get a
albino
lot?
cherries. I know that. There's only five. I'm building the tank up slowly. It's quite a big tank, but I'm
Yeah.
building it up slowly. So there's five little ones in there at the minute, and the man over at Summerhill was very meticulous. He was not allowing any of those fish, no matter their size, to leave that building unless he
Right.
had interrogated you about the temperature of your water, about all sorts of stuff that I didn't know anything about. But I have become something of a SeaWorld specialist.
Are we gonna see you posting pictures of yourself holding massive carp at a fishing lake soon? Oh, and there he is. He's gone. Let's hope he can come back because on tonight's episode we're going to be talking about what happened in the last full council, about political assistance and why they're costing so much money. I mean, apparently it's 280 grand total to bring in these political assistants. And for the life of me, I don't know what we're getting for that money. That's why I want to find out from the man himself, who might know, because no doubt he will be tasked with employing one. Um, we've got lots of money issues at Basildon Council. We've got £1 million being spent on this and £1 million being spent on that. But from what I can tell, none of it is being spent on you. None of it is being spent on us. So we've got that to discuss as well. Um, Now, when it comes to what's going on at Basildon Council, we've also got um, a new chief executive, which we want to talk about. I'm going to try and see if I can find Gavin. I don't think he's come back in the room. Let me see if I can bring him back on or not. He might be there. Um, at least look, we know it's live. You can tell that it's live because there's a complete mix up at the beginning. Hopefully there'll be no more. So we've got a new chief executive I want to talk about, and then we're going to talk about what goes on in Thurrock, and we are going to talk about something which I have a keen interest in, which is the fact that Andy Burnham wants to abolish council tax and replace it with something else. That something else is going to be a land value tax. Now, that to me sounds a little bit ropey, I can't lie. Um, Now, what I would say is that if you are renting, do you have concerns about what this is going to mean for your home? Because at the end of the day, I think council tax is just overpriced as it is. I don't think you get much for it. I think that it's a complete rip-off, actually. If you want a pothole filled, you can't get it done. If you want the police to turn up, you'll be lucky. If I think the fire brigade are probably the only service which actually turns up on time. And I'm not slating any of the services. I'm just saying what actually happens on the ground that we know happens on the ground, which is that if you call them, they don't come, and if they do come, it's too late. I mean, for example, years ago, some people know this about me, some people don't, but I'll tell you this very briefly, and this will make a few people laugh. I know it will make someone in particular laugh very much when I say this, is that a few years ago when I had a heart attack, I didn't call an ambulance. I drove myself to the hospital because I figured that if I wait, I'm probably not going to get seen to on time. So we had that. That's a concern for council tax. Another thing we're going to talk about when Gavin comes back, if he comes back. Let's hope he's not done a runner, um, because last week I did give him a good seeing to. Two polls have shown that Reform have sunk beneath Labour for the first time in 2 years. This will be the first time in 2 years that Reform UK have not topped a political poll in the UK. Or more to the point, in England. I don't think they're too popular in Scotland, but in England at least. And then obviously we've got that stupid by-election that Farage has put himself forward for against the bin. And we're going to be going through some of the bin's policies later on when Gavin comes back. But if he doesn't come back anytime soon, I'm actually going to go through them with you now because I think it might be quite a bit of fun to go through something. It's actually quite funny. So here we have some of the bin's policies. Now I'm going to have to bring this up on my screen down here purely because it's far too small for me to have a look at. So the bin, I mean, this is actually really funny. So I will boost the region's economy, prestige, and fame in Clacton. I mean, I don't think that that would be too hard to do. No disrespect to Clacton, but I don't think it would be too hard to do. There he is. The man is back. We're going through some of the funny bits of the bin's manifesto, Gavin, as you disappeared for a bit. I've just explained to everyone what's coming up, but I figured this might be a
I
bit
love
of
the
good.
bin.
Yeah, it's good humour. So he will cut your taxes and raise everyone else's. That's pretty funny. Um, Bus fares to be capped at 1.99 and a 99 flake ice cream will cost no more than 99p. I've noticed that, haven't you? That like, if you go to an ice cream van, which I don't really, but you walk past them, you think, oh, you get a 99, it costs you £2.50. It's like, fuck off, mate. It was called a 99.
And the
Um,
rest, where I've been perched over the course of the last couple of weeks doing these interviews, I've been looking at the ice cream truck parked in Basildon Town Centre, and I think he's
yeah,
probably sold 4 ice creams in in the last 2 weeks. They are unbelievably expensive.
there we go. I'm mucking things up now. Um, Pledge to build at least one affordable house. I don't think it'll be too difficult to build an affordable house in Clacton if you just, repurpose a caravan. That'll be okay. Um, Another thing on here, MPs who change party mid-parliament to be forced with a by-election. I actually agree with that. I think that they should probably have to go back in because, you know, I can understand it if you were part of the Conservative Party and you've moved over to Reform or vice versa. You can kind of explain that away. But if you go from Labour to, I don't know, Restore Britain, it does raise many an eyebrow. Um, Potholes to be filled using copies of the 2024 Labour manifesto. That's a good one. Gavin, do you like that one?
Yeah, and I'm sure the new Prime Minister will enjoy that one as well.
Yeah, that's good. I mean,
I
I'm
think,
sure Andy Burnham's
I
got a good
think,
sense of humour.
yeah, yeah. I think Bimface is carrying the hopes of the nation, isn't he? I think
Yeah,
there's lots of people that want him to do well and Farage to get his comeuppance. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's going to be hilarious, to be honest.
There's one here which I thought was pretty good. So if you watched the World Cup recently, which God forbid, you sat through that absolute toilet of a tournament. Wayne Rooney to be the new expert summariser for the BBC at Eurovision because when he said the halftime show at the final, he went, "Yeah, that was a load of crap." This is great because that's what you want. Because I mean, if they were trying to compete with the Super Bowl, rolling out Justin Bieber to sing a song about God, and Madonna walking out with Ronaldinho and Ronaldo, and I have to be honest, I did post a meme, which was basically Katie Price has been reunited with Dwight York and Harvey, which I thought was quite was quite funny. But yeah, we could have that one. Any of this that you think is actually a good policy, Gavin? Looking at this as a political man.
Well, look, I think he's trying to undercut Burnham's £2 bus fare caps with his 199s.
There we go.
And I think that line about I will cut your taxes and raise everyone else's taxes is just
Yeah.
genius political spin. So yeah, I think uh, he's only going to accept the £5 million donation on Earth, but not in Sigma 9 or wherever he apparently lives. If someone wants to give him 5 million quid, he'll accept it there. But no, good luck to him. And what an absolute farce this whole by-election with Nigel Farage really is. Um, and doesn't it just prove that um, this whole thing that Farage has done is just it's a complete and utter waste of time.
I don't understand why he's done it. I think that, you know, what I was expecting was everyone was going to come out and be like, "Oh, we've got to take on Farage because this might be a chance we can get rid of him." Instead, you've got news articles about the bin and 35 other candidates who are complete unknowns apart from Lawrence Fox, who will, again, Lawrence Fox is a very close friend of mine. I do love him dearly, but people mistake him from this serious politician as opposed to someone who just wants to make a point. And I think that, by this by-election being called, I think that many a point will be made, just not the one that Nigel wanted to make. I think that's the funny thing about it.
It's an arrogance, isn't it? That
Mm,
he believed that he was dictating British politics, and I think, what happened with the Labour leadership contest and the fact that we've now got a prime minister and an operation around the prime minister that is, I heard one political commentator today say that Andy Burnham has played the attention economy like a fiddle this week. Announcement after announcement, in pubs up north, all over the country. It's been really, really hard for anyone else to kind of get a look in politically. And I think the idea that Burnham and Labour, and we might talk about this later on, were going to throw away that opportunity to seize the political agenda, to seize the news agenda, in order to kind of dance to Farage's tune in Clacton for 6 weeks. I don't think for a minute that was ever going to happen. So it might have done under Starmer or Corbyn or under some of those guys, but I think it's a very different operation now. And I think, if I'm being honest with you, what I'm seeing so far as well, I think Reform, I think GB News, I think a lot of those guys are really struggling with how to frame Burnham and how to
mm.
go after this Labour government. Um, and so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But one thing's for sure, running around beating up a bin, and crucially, right, and this is a real thing that people have overlooked. On Thursday next week, or this week, I should say now, we've got the Greater Manchester mayoral by-election for Andy Burnham's old job, right? And
Mm.
I know for a fact, because when I was in Makerfield during the by-election, the Labour Party were really, really nervous, and they believed that there was a real chance that they could lose the by-election for the mayoralty. And what Farage has done by calling this by-election and pulling all of Reform's resources into Clacton and away from that by-election means that Labour should be pretty comfortable now on Thursday. And Bev Craig should get elected as the mayor. So again, all that's going to do is just boost Burnham again that he's
Do you
winning.
think that do you think Reform would have stood a chance in Manchester anyway?
Yeah, I do. I think
Oh, really?
I think it's on the outskirts. I mean, obviously, Wigan, every single seat in the Wigan council area went Reform in May. They made a lot of inroads in places like Tameside, in Stockport. So on the outer ring of Manchester, Labour really struggled. They struggled in Bolton, and then obviously there's kind of different sort of divisions in places like Oldham and Rochdale and places like that. So Manchester City itself is obviously rock solid red, but the rest of it could be quite difficult. And clearly, Labour lost the Gorton and Denton by-election in Tameside, that albeit to the Greens, but Reform came second in that by-election. And I think that there was a real nervousness that, because of the way that the voting system works, it's not a first past the post system. There was a nervousness that Labour could be in trouble, but I think that's subsided now.
Mm. So when you think about what's going on in Clacton, do you actually think that there's a chance Farage could lose?
probably
Because
not.
if I was a voter, I would be a little bit pissed off that I'm being asked to vote for him again in for no reason. I'll come and vote for me again because we've got a real issue with um the deep state are trying to get me. It's a political stitch up, and why is it not computing to some of these voters that this was completely unnecessary? And if it was me, I wouldn't turn up to the polling booth at all. I'd just be like, "Do you know what, bollocks! You've treated me like a mug. I'm not going to go." And I think there's pretty a lot of people that, if they really turn their heads and on this subject, they'll think the same way. But then people might be taken in by the cult of Farage and think, well, yeah, he's right. We've got to get rid of the establishment, whoever they might be. I mean, Farage, the more and more he spends in politics, comes across to me like the same people he's trying to get rid of.
Yeah, I mean, look, this idea that they began with around the whole by-election was going to be framed as Nigel Farage versus the establishment. I mean, what a load of old bollocks.
Mm.
Nigel Farage is the establishment, and when you've got Richard Tice coming out defending these donations from Cottrell, talking about how the Cottrells are a wonderful aristocratic family, and you think, right, yeah, you're the
Well, he's
boys
in
up
trouble now
against.
himself, isn't he? Hey, Richard Tice has been in the news for taking money from the same family and funneling into Reform UK from his business. I mean, look, I've said this many times over, and I suppose I have to repeat the point just so it comes across like I'm consistent, which I am. But if you can get a few quid, take it. If it's legal, take it. But the problem is it's all this undeclared business, which just casts a massive shadow over what it is they're trying to do here with Reform UK. And I think many people might be looking at them thinking, well, this reminds me of the previous scandals within the Labour Party, which was, cash for honours, and you got the Tory sleaze of the 90s, which, and even during the Cameron years, there was all that stuff going on with him, all the scandals around his party then. It's like it doesn't seem to change. And what used to be somewhat of an inspirational figure for me in Nigel Farage is now a bit. I don't really want to say this because this will, but I've got to be honest. I just kind of see him as a bit of a joke.
Yeah, I mean, look, the political strategy behind all of this at the turn of the year, right, was that in order for Farage and Reform to overtake the Conservatives as the main party of the right in British politics, they had to attract the kind of middle ground David Cameron Church of England Tories that would 10 years ago have seen Nigel Farage and UKIP as the BNP in suits, right? And now they are seeing them as something more acceptable. That was the political strategy. The problem that Farage has had is that this year, Restore Britain have emerged and they have been quite vocal. Obviously, you've got Elon Musk and those guys who are putting pressure on from the hard far right. And so on some of those things, there's been a tendency to kind of pull reform further to the right, which is not comfortable territory for those kind of middle ground Tories to see the party going in. But then equally, he's trying to pretend that he can be all things to all people, and he's as you say, he's presenting himself as one of the same every other political leader embroiled in some kind of financial corruption, dodgy donations or all that kind of stuff, and he doesn't look like the fresh new kid on the block. And again, I think it's really hard. I did say this at the turn of the year. It's really hard in a 5-year parliament. I remember working for MPs in the 2010 to 2015 parliament, and it's exhausting, right? When you get into year 4, year 5 of those parliaments, and you're trying to gear up towards a general election, to look fresh and new and energetic is really, really hard when it's just been the same grind over and over and over again. And I said at the turn of the year, it's going to be really hard for Farage to keep everyone pissed off for another 3 years. And I do think, and we again we'll talk about the kind of the burn and bounce, if you like. I do think this positivity and the hope and the belief that he keeps talking about, I do think that is something that the public are desperate to hear from politicians. And I do think that at that level of where he's at, he is really kind of drawing a line in the sand between himself and Farage, and he is the fresh new thing. And Farage now looks like the guy who's been there for 2 years, 10 years on from Brexit, embroiled in scandal, going through all this kind of melodrama with by-elections, and he's going to end up in a parliamentary standards committee for all of this. He's probably going to be found guilty. We're probably going to have a recall petition, and we're probably going to be back at the polls again before Christmas. What by the time we get to Christmas, what have Reform achieved this year other than Nigel Farage running around the streets of Clacton, which you and I both know means that he can't be in America and he can't be off around the world earning money, and he'll be hating it. And because he just doesn't ever go to his constituency and he uses them for political purposes, which again, fine, if they re-elect him, so be it. But he had, that's the thing. They'll look back at this year from a Reform strategist point of view and say all the gains they made in 2024 in the local election, all the gains they made in 2025's local election, it's been for nothing, because the party is going to end the year in a much worse place than it started against a resurgent Labour Party that, they, I think, bet the house that Labour were going to get rid of Starmer, and we're going to either end up with Wes Streeting or an Angela Rayner type. They obviously didn't calculate that Burnham would get back into Parliament, and they obviously didn't calculate that he would be coronated and he would, be able to go into the party conference season in September in what looks like, although a week is a long time in politics, let alone 6 weeks, what looks like in quite a strong position, having got a grip of the Labour Party, become a more acceptable face. And I have to say, I watched that Koonsberg interview that he did yesterday, Burnham, and I know him because obviously I worked for him for a little while as well. I could tell that when he was sitting there, he wanted to have a fight with Koonsberg. He wanted her to attack his ideas so he could explain why he believed what he believed. And I thought, how refreshing is that now from any political party to have a leader who knows what they believe, knows what they think, knows what they want to do, and is prepared to go on national television and go into bat for it,
Mm.
rather than these kind of timid crap answers that we've been used to from politicians, toeing the line. I've got these soundbite in my head that I'm going to repeat 15 times in a 3-minute interview and hope I get out the other side of it. So yeah, I think Reform have got themselves in all sorts of bother, and I think what we are going to see from the turn of the year 2027, 2 years out from the next general, is I think we're going to see a return to a two-party political system between Labour and Conservative.
So it's back to type. Well,
Sorry.
one thing we definitely won't have in Basildon is a two-party system, will we? It seems like there's a lot to discuss. So let's talk about what's going on locally, as that's what Common Ground is all about, bringing local politics into the spotlight, giving you guys who are watching an opportunity to get a deeper understanding. Obviously, Gavin Callaghan is an elected Labour politician, and I am. Well, I'm not elected. I've just got many political opinions, and me and Gavin disagree on quite a bit, but we tend to agree on quite a lot too, hence the name of the show. Is Basildon's finances, and it says you've asked to join the stream. I don't know why it said that. Never mind. You're still here, aren't you?
I'm still here.
He's still here, right. Anyway, so last full council, I didn't attend it. I've decided to avoid the melee because, I don't want to get lynched, death threatened, abused in the street. I mean, it seems like politics in that chamber is worse than an episode of EastEnders at Christmas. Um, Gavin, give us a recap on what happened in the last full council meeting, because not only was there a lot with regards to the political assistance, you've got a new chief executive, which I want to talk to you about, and another £1 million wasted on what is being drummed up by the Conservatives and Reform UK as a scandal with Morgan Sindall. Just break down, if you can, what actually happened, and we'll go on to some of the accusations that were made against you during that meeting as well.
Yeah, and look, just to say as well, so to some of the comments, do keep your questions coming in. We'll try and answer as many questions as we go throughout the course of the podcast. Look, we spoke last Monday about this extraordinary council meeting, and that was quite an interesting meeting. Not. It lasted about 20 minutes. There was only two speakers, I think, or three speakers, and it was a complete and utter damp squib. We had the extraordinary situation where the mayor of Basildon defrocked himself to not
Uh-oh.
be the mayor of Basildon, and
Uh-oh.
to go and sit in the public, or into the main chamber, and to move a motion. That has never happened before. The senior officers were at pains to tell group leaders that it should not have happened. It was an abuse of the protocol, but they felt unable to stop Genet from doing it. I also know that there were splits in the reform camp, because the reason he did it was because a number of those reform councillors would not move the motion because they thought it was a complete waste of time. And so they ended up having a 20 odd minute meeting, and it all fell by the wayside as a bit of a damp squib. What was it really interesting though is that we had this conversation not just on this podcast, on other podcasts, about what it's like in the council chamber, and you have been at the AGM and you've seen it for yourself from the
Mm,
inside on some of the others. This time around, more members of the public wanted to come, but they were not all Reform UK activists. And so, so what we had this time was we had a number of people queuing up from about 6 o'clock, waiting to go into the council chamber. And outside the council chamber, these residents were effectively being interviewed by some of these Reform UK activists to understand who they were, what they believed in, and who they were coming there to support. And so a lot of them were like, well, we're just here for a meeting because we've got a question, or we're just going to come and listen to the debate. There was a thing about buses on the Nares, for example, which was an important issue to some of the residents who wanted to come along
mm,
to listen to the debate about that. And so as the meeting progressed and it started, the meeting proper progressed and started. And I got up and started ripping apart some of the nonsense about political assistance. Obviously, members of the public gallery, who are perhaps a little bit more supportive of me than of Mr. Genet, started cheering and applauding, and the reform guys did not expect that to be happening. And what was very interesting is that one of the guys at the back of the room, who was not a reform supporter, um, came up with this idea of talking nonsense in code. And so he kept using phrases like Red Robin is in the nest and things like that, and sort of looking at Labour councillors and saying, Red Robin is in the nest. And the reform, and it was all just to prove that these reform conspiracy theorists who were there in the front row are just talking rubbish all night, and they believe whatever is said in front of them. And then I think at one point he was talking about blue waffle and blue ribbons and all the rest of it, and it was a bit of light-hearted fun to just prove that people can just swallow anything that they hear. And it got a bit tense in that public gallery. And again, as the Labour councillors, we tried to ignore it as best as we could for 2 hours, and then eventually, between Andy Barnes and Sam Genet and Basildon Dave, as I think he calls himself, Mr. Dave Mitchell. They kept lying about me and making allegations about things that I said that I never said. So I confronted him about it, and I said to him very clearly, "You are lying, and I know
yeah.
you're lying, and it's not what's said on the video." And obviously, we will have seen what happened thereafter. And interestingly, I actually said to my group in the group room after the meeting, I said, let's just let them hang themselves for a couple of days. So I knew exactly what they were going to do. So they'll come out and they'll tell everybody Gavin Callaghan was pointing in the face of a female councillor where she says, leave me alone. Listen, if anybody knows Michelle Reagan, I've known Michelle a long time. She stood against me in 2016 for UKIP, right? Me and her don't see eye to eye politically, but as she said to me at the end of the meeting, she respects me for giving it a go in local politics, right? We're not shrinking violets, and we're not new to one another. We've known each other a little while, and this made me laugh because this I knew would happen. And so we had the footage of what really went on, which I released this week as well. Um, and it proves that what Sam was doing was essentially sensationalizing, lying, seeking to paint me in a bad picture, seeking to do all that sort of stuff. And then he had egg on his face because the footage was then released and showed that he was lying. But of course, he doesn't care because across all of his platforms, he's probably made 250 quid this week on social media monetization. So
uh,
uh, there we
no,
go.
you have to watch last week's episode. Sam's denied making money from his social media. I just, it's fair that we say that. But when I see
No one
political
believes.
output, no, no, I mean, look, he's denied it. I mean, do I think that Sam is using Facebook to push his own name out there? 100%. Do I think he's making money? Only he knows, or unless the council are able to investigate that, I suppose you'll find out eventually. But I do think that he does want, mass attention, and I think that he does well in getting it, actually. Um, Now, I want to read
Through
out the
lying.
post.
I mean, but hang on, hang on,
Yeah,
hang on, hang on. If you're a councillor and you're an elected politician, you can't say, I'm going to use the fact that the public have voted for me to make me a politician so I can then lie and lie and lie and lie and lie to get popularity to boost my social media numbers. That's you can't do that as a politician. And what we proved this week is that the post that you see on screen now was a
yeah.
complete and utter load of bollocks. And
Yeah, it was. I'll give you due there. It was. I mean, what I was going to say was when I saw this, I knew because of the cropping that there was more to be seen, and
bit like the
because it
business
was.
rates letter.
Well, it's like you've got the portrait, which is like the TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts type of format, and now Facebook Reels. Then you got the widescreen, which is what we're doing tonight. Now, if he'd have produced the widescreen, it would have been clear for all to see, but instead he chops off, two-thirds of it to show you the narrow view. And at the end of the day, even if you do look closely at the narrow view, the portrait angle, you can see that you're talking through the woman. You're talking past her, like, you know, and that, if people want to go back and look, is very, very clear. What I don't understand is why Sam feels the need to lie about this in particular. Now, I know you two don't see eye to eye, you don't get along, and there's so much on that subject that we could go into, but I'd love it if I could get a head to head with you and him on here. I think
You'd
that would
never do
be
it.
I think that would be box office if we could arrange that. So maybe let us know if you want to see that, because I think people would want to see that outside of the ceremony and hear ye sing the national anthem bollocks that you get at Basildon Council. Now you can actually have a real conversation. Um,
About policy.
a policy is that my new policy? Get rid of the national
I know.
anthem, and
My you're suggesting that we might have a real debate about policy.
that would be good. That would be very good.
And that
The
and that's why he won't turn up.
well, the pontifications about nothing really get on my nerves, because obviously I watch everything, and I don't take it all in, but what I do see, I think to myself, this was just a waste of a post. This was a waste of people's attention to watch this. And I'm not saying it's just Sam. I've seen things by you as well, and I think, oh, come on, mate. Like, genuinely, I've thought that in the past, and I'm like, oh, come on, have a day off, Gavin. But I think that Gavin, sorry, Sam shouldn't really be posting things about you, Gavin, in this way, because you can't really get away with having a go at women or children. You just can't get away with it. And I think that the way this has been labelled is bad. Women should never feel uncomfortable in capital letters at a council meeting. Well, Mr. Mayor, they weren't uncomfortable because you lied. And I think, whilst he's not here to defend himself, I think we have to say what it is. It's a complete lie. How do you deal with that? I mean, like, the culture in the council, even from back in the day when I was knocking around and trying to get involved, was always a little bit tense and a little bit tetchy. Now it just seems like it's a never-ending flurry of abuse, whether it be from the public or whether it be from councillors. How do you and your group intend to deal with this? And do you have any sympathy shared in the Conservative Party about this behaviour?
So no, the Conservative Party are willing it on because the longer that this is going on, the less scrutiny those councillors are under themselves. And as we have alluded to before on this podcast, there are a fair few things in that Conservative group that they would not like the light to be shone on. So no, I mean, look, yeah, the reality is Labour councillors' hands are tied, right? When you have idiots like this coming out with posts like that, which are designed to try and suggest that I've been abusive towards women and all that kind of stuff. We knew he was lying. It was obvious he was lying. As you say, the footage was so doctored that he put out, that it was uh, Josh Potter's back.
Yeah.
There we go. It was obvious that they were lying. So as a consequence of that, you don't take it too seriously, right? And in an ordinary council, what you would do is you would make a complaint to the chief legal officer, but we know he's biased and he's on their side and he's a complete waste of time, Mark Greenberg. So there's no point in even going there. And thankfully now we have commissioners coming in to do this intervention. So we will be able to present that to them. None of those commissioners are paid by Basildon Council. None of them are, their jobs are not reliant on Basildon councillors or anything like that. So from that point of view, we know that we'll get a fair hearing out of those guys. But why did he do this? I think this is the more important point, and this is why I know Sam Genet will never ever come and have a debate with me, and neither would Andy Barnes. Remember, in the local election campaign, I challenged both of them to debates with me, and they wouldn't do it, right? And the reason they did all of this, the reason they sensationalized this, the reason that this is what we're talking about, is because last Tuesday night they spent £250,000 of public money on hiring political assistants, right? They spent money on biscuits and sandwiches and all the rest of it so they could stuff their faces during the intervals. They spent over £800,000 that they know that they can't afford when it comes to halving the grass tax, right? We'd all like to halve the grass tax. I tried to do it in two budgets when I was the leader. It's an £800,000 commitment that you have to be able to show that you can fully fund. So last Tuesday, between the political assistance of 200 odd thousand pounds and the £800,000 on halving the grass tax, Reform UK councillors spent £1 million in that meeting last week, and not one line on how they were actually going to afford it and pay for it. And you have the audacity to run around this borough in the election saying that I piled up the debt and I didn't know what I was doing on the money and they were going to come in and cut all the waste. Honestly, it's laughable that these people are able to do what they did last Tuesday. But the Conservatives are there putting their hands up, voting for it, and they don't want us as the opposition to be shining a light on this. Political assistance, just so people really understand what this is. They are a paid officer of the council, so they work for Basildon Council, but they are allowed to be political. So they are allowed to work on behalf of a political party. So the law says that you have to have a certain percentage of councillors in order to be able to qualify to have one. So in Basildon Council, that would mean that three political parties qualify: Labour, Conservative, and Reform, and they are paid anywhere between 40 to 60,000 pounds depending on their experience. And then when you add on their national insurance and their pension, each of them costs around about 80 odd thousand pounds to have. Now, the other thing to say is that if the independent groups, if Kerry Smith and Eunice Brockman's group came together, they would qualify for one as well. So there could actually be four. And what that means in budgetary terms is that Basildon Council has to therefore budget for four of those people. So it's all well and good sitting there, and these guys tried to make the argument last week saying, well, Labour have said that they're not going to hire one, and the Independents have said they're not going to hire one. That doesn't matter. You have to budget for it in every single year as a council because the law says you have to give everyone equal treatment and all the rest of it. What are these people going to do every day? They're going to answer casework. Maybe they're going to write speeches, they're going to write questions, they're going to be formulating campaigns, they're going to be running around the council trying to get political advantage for certain political parties. I don't know about you, Charlie boy, but I'm not looking at Basildon Council right now thinking that what that place needs is more political toxicity. I would suggest this is a bad
Well,
move.
I'm wondering how I can apply for this job. I mean, I don't care which party it is, if I'm completely honest. I mean, the job's a job, right? And if it's 80 grand for me to talk politics all day, I mean, I do that now. So there we go. Let's have it.
Well, I mean, this is the absurdity of it, right? I mean, you probably could qualify because one of the stipulations is that you're not allowed to get elected, and obviously you haven't had a great experience at that. So, but you'd qualify.
Right.
Um, but
Uh, Right.
it's a waste of time, right? Honestly, these things are a
Hold on a
waste of time.
second. I've got a phone call from Sam Genet. You want me? You want to give me the job that I'll take out Gavin Callaghan next election? I don't think he'll need me for that. I think you're knackered anyway, mate. But fuck, I tell you what. I knew
You
there
haven't
was a
seen the
joke
polls
coming.
today, have you?
I knew there was a joke coming about me there somewhere.
But listen, it's an important point. This on the political assistance, right? It is an absolute farce. It's a complete and utter waste of money. It's a way for councils to be lazy and not do their job. But also, given the context that this is in, right, in Basildon, can you imagine? Just play this through in your own mind, right? We go out to recruit and I bring somebody in who's sympathetic to Labour Party values, sympathetic to what I, as the leader of my group, want us to achieve, the regeneration, council hospital, all that sort of stuff. I bring them in and I say, okay, um, you're going to work for us and you're going to go, and your job now as my Labour political assistant is to go and ask really hard questions in that council. I want to know where all the bodies are buried. I want to know where all of the money's being spent. I want you to unearth all the. How quickly do you think Sam Genet is going to put that person's name, address, photos of their kids, all that kind of stuff, all over social media, the way he's done to me, the way he's done to senior officers of the council? That person is going to be hung, drawn, and quartered publicly. They're not going to be able to walk out of the Basildon Council offices to go to Greg's at lunchtime for fear of these lunatics coming up to them and give them a load of abuse. It wouldn't possibly be safe for that person to have a job at Basildon Council with what
Mm,
those people will do on social media to them. So it would make it completely unfair because then again, Labour's political assistant would probably hand their notice in within the first 3 weeks, and then they'd be off, and we'd be out to recruit again. And in the end, you'd be sat there going, "Well, actually, Labour have only had a political assistant for 2 or 3 months of the year, whilst the Tories and Reform have had them all year round." So again, and they used in the argument, Charlie, they used this line that I had a head of leader's office when I was the leader of the council. I even wish I did have a head of
mm.
the leader's office. I tried for 2 years to restructure that governance team. I couldn't get anything through the council, which is why it ended up in the governance mess it did.
Try not to go off on a tangent about the office. I want to focus a little bit more on the actual responsibilities of what a political assistant would actually do, because whilst I take on board that you believe this is a pointless
Yeah.
spend by the council, and I accept that, that's your view on it. Some people might actually want to be able to find out what these jobs actually entail, and I think maybe I'll do a bit of research on that and find out what the job spec actually is, so we actually can maybe have a debate on whether it is value for money, because it might be. Probably won't be, because the description that you've given us is basically what a politician should be doing, what a branch chairman should be doing, what people around the leader of a group should be doing. Writing questions and devising speeches. I mean, I know that politicians do have speech writers from time to time. I know you've written a few in the past for MPs, um, but there's some collaboration there, I guess, and I don't know.
It's
Maybe we
about
shouldn't really
scale,
be
though, isn't
looking.
it?
Yeah, of
It's
course,
about
yeah, because I
so
don't see why we're having, people are already pissed off that they've got to spend out on council tax as it is. And I was saying in the preamble to the show when your connection vanished that, we don't get a lot for our money when we pay
Mhm.
council tax. You mentioned a grass tax. What a joke. I mean, who invented
Yep.
that? It's a load of bollocks. You
Kevin
get a
Blake.
pay, yeah, well, Kevin Blake, let's get him on the show and have a chat with him, because you get taxed for everything, and it seems like councils are becoming more and more bloated to fulfill positions and responsibilities that no one actually asked for. Most people just want to be able to drive down the road without a tyre blowing out, have the police turn up when they call them, and have their bins collected before the rats turn up and start gnawing through the bottom of their bins outside. It's not too much to ask for a council. So this to me seems like it's someone who's a politico like me. I think any opportunity for a politician, if you like, to get involved in something is good, but that would be a selfish mindset of me to have. But for the taxpayer, the money's got to be justified some way somehow, and I don't know how anyone can just yet. Now, when it comes to money spending, you've mentioned that we've got the political assistance, that the grass tax thing is, I mean, I don't want to labour on that, because who wants to pay for fucking grass? But then there's another thing going on with money, that has been on social media quite a lot this week regarding Morgan Sindel and Basildon Council. And before we get on to that, Joe Gorham has asked, will Basildon go into special measures? It's a good question to ask, Joe. I'm sure Gavin will be able to answer that in a second. But when it comes to Morgan Sindel, you've been accused of wasting £1 million. You're accusing the Tories and Reform of wasting £1 million. Where are we going with this? So, Joe first,
But
then the council.
okay, so on Joe's point, it will depend on what the commissioner's best value inspection says. So they are due to report by October. So we will wait to see what they say. I can't, if I'm being honest with you, I can't see a scenario where intervention doesn't carry on in some form or another, because unless Andy Barnes has a road to Damascus moment and realizes that putting someone like Sam Genet on a platform the way that he has is a really bad idea for Basildon Council and its reputation, we are going to continue on this path of decline that we have seen over the course of the last sort of 9 months or so. So it's very likely that we may end up in special measures. I just differentiate slightly in what you said there about my characterisation of the £1 million. I'm not suggesting that the council is wasting £1 million. I think they're wasting £200,000 on political assistance. If it was possible to cut the grass tax by 50%, then we would support that. The problem that I have is that that was an unfunded uh, policy that was passed last week, which is why the Labour Party that I lead in Basildon abstained on that vote, because we await to see what the budget book says in the autumn, so that we can actually have a proper view at how they're seeking to do it. As I said, I tried to cut the grass tax twice, but because it was an £800,000 commitment, I wasn't able to do it. So what I ended up doing was freezing the council tax as a cost of living measure, which is
But
about 350.
the grass tax is a relatively new tax. So just get rid of it. Why can't you get rid of it?
Because it's baked into the what's called the MTFS, right? So that means that it makes about £1.6 million a year of revenue to the council. So the council has decided that it's not going to cut certain things because it's going to bring in that money. So if you then go and cut that £800,000 out of it, you'll have to cut something. And for me, what was important when I was leading the council was that I wanted to bring the bins back to a weekly service. I wanted to turn the street lights on. I wanted to have the crunches regular. And I wanted to reintroduce the summer prunes so that we were cutting the grass and the hedges more often. So by doing that and prioritising that, I wasn't able to take that £800,000 out of the budget. And because I had that revenue, I was able to do some of those other things as well. So that is, politics is to govern is to choose, right? You have to make choices. And I think, as I said in my speech last week, what Reform are trying to do is get the public to look both ways. They're trying to say you can have all of these nice policies, but you don't have to pay for them. And ultimately, the rubber is going to hit the road on that. What they're talking about in relation to Morgan Cinder was slightly different. And again, the conversations that I was having today with some residents about Morgan Cinder and the fucking state they're leaving these houses in,
Mm.
it's diabolical, right? And when I sometimes think that the public think that when you're the leader of the council or you're a cabinet member, you walk through the door, you click your fingers, you tell the officers this is what I want you to do, and then it just happens, right? It does not work like that. I wish it did, but it doesn't work like that. What you end up, and I think your old mate Liz Truss used to talk about this, that you end up fighting the blob, right? That's what she used to call.
I hate that phrase. It's. I mean, I would be keen to know if anyone watching this knows what Liz Truss refers to when she says the blob. It's such a political term that unless you're in that world, you just don't know what it means. And even though Gavin and I do know what it means, it's still such a shit term to use. Like it's just crap.
Yeah, well, to those people who don't know what the blob means, it means the civil service. It means the officers in the council, the people that hold the budgets, that make the decisions. And I remember it really clearly. It was September 2024, and my wife Emma Callahan, she chaired a scrutiny committee on Morgan Sindel, and she absolutely tore it apart. And it was scary, Charlie, genuinely scary to look at all of the things that they were getting wrong and how badly the contract was being managed. It was on us as the council. We were not managing that contract well. Procurement was a mess. So subcontractors were getting paid money for jobs that they were just never doing and they weren't even turning up to, but it wasn't being properly tracked through the system. Complaints and disrepairs. Like I think in the last year of Andy Baggett, so my first year back, I think we did that in that financial year up until the 31st of March 2024, I think we did something like £4 million in disrepair claims and payouts to residents because their properties were so bad. We had Arab's law coming in around damp and mold, so we knew we had to make these big fundamental changes. And one of the things was that I was sat there looking around the council, going, right, okay, so who's my housing director? Who are the people who really understand how we're going to change this service and take it forward? And the truth is, and no disrespect to those officers, they were junior officers. They were not at the level required to be able to go, right, this is a £24 million a year contract on repairs. We are going to fundamentally change that. We're going to end it. And actually, in the September, I went to a Morgan Sindall away day that they held with Basildon council officers. And I said to them, I'm giving you 6 months. So I'm giving you 6 months to turn this around, or I am ending this contract and I will not renew it in 2026. And in the room, the jaws hit the floor. Who the hell does this guy think he is? Blah, 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 blah. I said, no, I'm giving you. Let's work together. Let's come up with a plan. You've got 6 months. We'll do it together. Let's take this seriously. Let's turn around the situation our residents are in. If you tell me you need more money to cope with the backlog, instead of giving you 24 million a year every year for 10 years or whatever, we'll front load it. And then we'll have a situation where it comes down so that let's look at all of that and see if we need to make any amendments to the contract, all that sort of stuff. I might as well have said rhubarb, 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 Charlie, to be honest with you, right? For all the fucking good that it did. And in
I
the
mean,
next six
that's what I hear when you talk to me. So,
well, there you go. I'm an expert here. And for the next 6 months, very little changed to the point where, as a cabinet, we sat there and we said, okay, well, we're making the announcement that we're ending the contract, and we have a year to go, and we're going to have a hybrid model and do exactly what we've done with the grass maintenance, the grounds maintenance. So we're going to have a hybrid model where we're going to transition over a period of a year and a half, and then we're going to take that in-house and we're going to create a system where we're going to draw down local businesses, local chippies, brickies, sparkies, and we're going to use them and direct award. So they'll get more money because Morgan Sindall are not taking the top slice off of the money, but overall it will work out to be cheaper than it will with Morgan Sindall running it. That is a huge job of work, right? No doubt at all about that. To manage that process, to get all of the IT systems, to get all of the tupiing of the HR over, that's a huge system. So in the summer last year, I had an LGA HR peer review where I said, look, I want this to happen. I want us to do this. We need to crack on. We need to set up our own repairs service, a DLO. We want to get on with doing that. And we were told, we had all the briefing notes from the officers that this work is happening, Councillor Callaghan. We are in hand. We're asking this person to do this bit of work and that person to do this bit of work. This is where we're going with it. And absolutely. And I was making it clear, our residents are getting a really poor deal, right? So we've got to make sure that we're changing this. So we set up a housing improvement board. We brought in residents to give us the insights that they had, and all of this is important context. In February of this year, we received an update from the chief executive that said to us, none of the work that we had asked and that we had been told in the previous 6 months was happening had actually been started.
mm.
So as a cabinet, we are sat there looking around at the executive director and at the head of housing and at the chief executive saying, come again? You've come into this room, you've been telling us for 6 months, you've been producing papers telling us all of this is in hand. These are the work streams. This is who's being appointed as senior responsible officer, SROs, to look after this, and this. We will have a new system up and running. This is how it's gonna go. And now you're telling me 4 months before the whole thing is supposed to go live that you have wasted the last 6 months, so we won't get to the end date. And then at the same time, the housing regulator came along and said, if you don't reappoint Morgan Sindall,
Mm.
and if you don't give them a 12-month contract extension, we will take all of your housing stock off of you, and Basildon Council will not have any housing stock of its own to manage. And so, as a
Right.
consequence of that, we ended up having to go to Morgan Sindall at the behest of the planning regulator, or the housing regulator, I should say. And we ended up having to negotiate. Now, obviously, from Morgan Sindall, from their point of view, they're only on a 12-month contract, so they're using agency staff. It's fixed term contracts. They've not got permanent members of staff working on it. That has a higher cost to it. So it was negotiated that it would cost the council £1 million in order to have them come in for this final year. The consequence of not doing that was, number one, we lose all of our housing stock, which would be a disaster, and we wouldn't have any control over it. Number two, it would mean that we did not have the time to go out and procure anybody else. We spoke to a number of other providers, but it takes about a year to procure, so we wouldn't have had the time to be able to do that and to bring these people in. Um, and ultimately, as part of the contract with Morgan Sindall, we did change their KPIs, and we did change what they were expected to do and to deliver. So it was a mess. But what I'm hearing now from the Conservatives and Reform is that, well, if we hadn't spent £1 million on this Morgan Sindall thing, we could have kept the area committees. It is scary, Charlie, that we have in Andy Barnes and Sam Janae, two people who still fundamentally do not understand the difference between a general fund account, which pays for cutting the grass, the leisure, environmental health, all of that stuff. And then the HRA, the housing revenue account, which is just the money that people who pay their rent pay in. That has got nothing to do with Basildon Council. You cannot use HRA money to fund Basildon Council General Fund services. So when I sit there listening to this
So
cabinet meeting last
it's
week,
ring fenced. The money is ring fenced.
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. So legally, you are not allowed. And one of the things the auditors do is look at, have you used any money from the HRA to fund other services? So, for example, what you can do is you can allocate percentages. So, if you take the Felmores estate as an example, 6% of our council housing stock is on the Felmores estate. So, therefore, you might allocate 6% of the grounds maintenance budget a bit more than 6%, but you would allocate some of the grounds maintenance budget to the general fund to help clean up an estate, because that's where council tenants live, as an example. So you can do things like that, but you cannot use HRA money to pay for things like the area committees, right? So when I hear at cabinet the leader and Sam Janae saying that, it just, like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, you
So
don't
what's
understand it.
what's the recourse for that then? Because you're saying they're not allowed to do it. Is it illegal or is it just against
Yeah,
standard
it'd be illegal.
procedure?
No, it'd be illegal.
So so
You would
how does it occur then if it's illegal? How do people allow that to go on? I mean, there must be oversight from people inside the council to say
Yeah,
to
so you're
councillors that you can't do this.
correct. Yeah. So the Section 151 officer has to produce a report. The chief finance officer is the Section 151 officer. He has to produce a report every year to the auditors about what the HRA money has been spent on. And quite clearly, the overwhelming majority of the money is spent on repairs and maintenance. And then within that, you have money that is set aside for the new build program. And then you will also have money for things like right to buy receipts. So if people buy their homes under right to buy, that is ring fenced into the HRA. So again, and not to put too fine a point on this, right? We're getting very excited about £1 million of spend, right? The HRA budget is 300 million. So in the grand scheme
Oh
of it,
wow.
it's quite a big number as in terms of the HRA, and is £1 million. The general fund budget, where the grass tax and the political assistance have added £1 million, that budget is only 38 million. So £1 million in the 38 million is still quite a lot. And within that general fund budget, again, not to get too technical on it, there is about a £6 million deficit next year. So when you add in a further £1 million of pressure, that means that between Andy Barnes and Sam Genet, they have to find nearly £8 million of savings. 20% of the Basildon Council budget has to be cut by February next year, which is going to mean savage cuts to frontline services.
So okay, so let's go back a couple of months when you were leader. Let's say you're presented with this issue of £8 million. What would you do if you were leader to find it? Because
Yep.
if these two gentlemen are not able to work out the difference between general fund housing, then how are they going to be able to find this? I don't want to slag them off unnecessarily, but it does seem like if they don't know where the money's coming and going, there might be a bit of a problem with this 8 million. So if you were going to make cuts, if you had to make cuts, which obviously you don't because you don't lead the council at this moment, where would you find them?
at this moment. I like
Well,
your
I'm
optimism.
try, I'm trying to be polite, mate. You know, I can't
Full
go too
time
heavy.
lucky.
Look, I
Um,
gave you I gave you a bollocking last week. I'm going to go a little bit softer this week on you. You know what I mean, mate?
um, well, no, on the broader point that you make there isn't the votes for this budget, right? So the 12 Conservative votes, the 11 Reform votes, I cannot see a scenario where in February Reform councillors are going to put their hand up for £8 million of cuts. Can't see it. Um, so what you end up with when I left office in May, the gap was 5.5 million, and what that means is, and again, people will all say, Gavin Callaghan, you left a gap, budget gap, blah, 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 blah. Every single year, right, since 2010, your council has been operating with a gap. So the way that the budget is made up is that you get the council tax comes in, and that is we keep 14% of the council tax. The rest goes to Essex County Council and the police and fire. You then get the government give you a grant, so they give you money, and then you look at all of that, and then you have a budget that you run. So again, as I said, in Basildon, we have a budget that's about £38 million. Obviously, with inflation, that goes up and down as well, but it's about £38 million. So what you then have to do every single year is you have to say, right, how much are we bringing in council tax? How much are we bringing in from government grant? And then what does that gap look like? And then the council must set a balanced budget by law. You are not allowed to set a budget with a deficit in it. You have to set a legal, lawful, balanced budget. So every single year, what the council has to do is it has to find that gap. So it started off back in 2012, 13, 14, that the gap was like £1.5 million, something like that, right? Which, if I'm being crude about it, is probably about 10 members of staff at the council that you say, thank you very much, but we're going to make you redundant because we are no longer going to have 20 staff in. And again, I'm making this up. So if any officers are watching, I'm making this up, right? We're not going to have 20 members of staff in the communities team. We're only going to have 10, right? And therefore
Yeah.
you're going to have to do the same amount of work, but with 10. What's now you're getting to the point where with the council, because it's been cutting for 15 years, the gap is actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so there's not a lot left to cut. And that's why you hear me when I talk about local government reorganisation, I always say local government as a sector is a sector that is going bankrupt. So as a council, we've got quite a healthy amount of reserve. So we've got about 25 million quid that sat in the bank as reserves. So if we've got a gap of 2-3 million pound and we can only save £1 million, we can soften some of it using some of the reserves, right? It's not a good practice because once you use them once, you can't use them again. You have to find ongoing savings. But the biggest thing that I would be doing right now, if I was tackling that, is I'd be getting hold of temporary accommodation, because temporary accommodation is the reason why you're seeing that inflated figure. Because what it means is that every single year that goes by, we are budgeting to pay more and more and more for hotels and for bed and breakfasts and that kind of stuff for temporary accommodation. You very kindly posted this week about the fact that the Tories have now done a U-turn on the Eastgate, and they've now said, yes, Gavin Callaghan was right in April. We should buy the Eastgate. In May, June, and July, because by the time contracts exchange, we won't own that until August. Linked to the Eastgate, you may remember, was about 130 residential properties. So within there is masonettes at the back and all that sort of stuff. We will have spent as a council in excess of £1 million between April and the beginning of August in hotel and bed and breakfast costs on temporary accommodation that should have not been spent, because we should have had that Eastgate Shopping Centre contract signed and sealed in April, so that in May, June, and July we were utilising that at the HRA level, so we weren't paying stupid money for that. So
And
going forward,
when will it be ready? Do you say August?
well, I'm not. privy to the legal, so I don't know exactly when they will exchange contracts and what the calling off period is. But if it was a 14-day calling off period and they've signed the contract already, then yes, the 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 expectation should be that Basildon will own the Eastgate and the associated residential
So
by the
either
first
way,
of August.
for the sake of a week, which is, going by today's date, I'm being quite generous there, a week, it would have still been the same outcome. £1 million would have been spent on temporary accommodation
No,
anyway, because the deal wouldn't have been done.
no. So I agreed the deal in April. And so that was all done and dusted. What the Tories did was they put a halt on the deal through calling it into scrutiny. And the officers, who again, as I said, they don't always do what you ask them to do, they didn't sign the contract because they were of the view that if the Tories and Reform got in, they might want to look at it and stop the decision, which is obviously before the election. But you and I were both reading on social media that Andy Barnes said it was a terrible deal, and Sam Genet
Mm.
said, "Over my dead body, will we be buying the Eastgate Shopping Centre?" So what I'm saying to you is,
But did
the
they do the
contract
right
should
thing
have
though?
been.
Before you talk about the contract, when you mentioned scrutiny, I don't want to take you off on a different angle here, but is it the right thing to do that they did pause the contract signing to look at the scrutiny and then say, well, actually, it looks like reform would have come in with the Tories. Maybe we should hold off completely. I mean, obviously, within your term limit, they should do everything that you want within your term limit. But when it comes to the scrutiny committee, were they right to pause the signing for that committee to be held?
If the overview and scrutiny committee meeting had been a meeting where the structure of the deal, the finances, the different options appraisals had been scrutinized by Andy Barnes and had been looked at by Andy Barnes, then I could have understood that there may have been some merit. But the overview and scrutiny meeting was a farce. It was a
Mm.
complete and utter waste of time. Zoe Hopton couldn't manage it. Apparently they were there to scrutinize me, but nobody told me that they were there to scrutinize me. So I wasn't able to answer any of their questions. I asked questions to Andy Barnes about, so have you changed the deal then? Is it different to my deal? What is it that's fundamentally, and he wouldn't answer any of the questions. So has this 3 month where we spent £1 million on temporary accommodation that we would not have spent if we'd have signed the deal back in April, has that been a good use of public funds? I would suggest not. But my broader point, Charlie, is if you can't see the urgency around saving £1 million by getting hold of 130 units now to be able to do it, that bill is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, temporary accommodation,
You're assuming expediency when it comes to putting people in those places. So
well, we could do it
let's,
tomorrow. We could do it tomorrow. It wouldn't,
but
we've got the,
you're saying that you could buy the Eastgate and tomorrow those accommodations are fit and ready for people to move in.
some of them would be, yeah,
Yeah. So
because,
what I'm saying is there's still going to be some expense. Maybe not as much as what you're
yeah, I mean,
describing, but there would still be
the,
some. And I think that, two things can be true at the same time. You've got a problem with the purchase because it's taking its time, but you've still got a massive problem with housing, hence the reason why the council are paying for hotels and temporary accommodation. So
but there's a
saying that
difference, isn't
this
there, between 10 grand and £1 million?
No, no, I 100%. But I feel like you're presenting this as a bit of a cure-all for that situation when you and I both agree that social housing is a foundational bedrock for every town in the country. There should be stock of council homes for people to move into and rent, because without it, people slip through the cracks. They get themselves in trouble. They've got nowhere to go. Like when you're homeless, I mean, I see people homeless all the time, and I do wonder, you know, where are you going from here? Like, if you say that we are all here, this is the line where we've all got homes, whether it be rented, council, or mortgage and owned. This is the line. If you're down here, how do you get to that line? Because people now can't afford houses, they can't get on council lists, they can't afford rents, they don't have rich parents to give houses to bequeath them. You know, like where do you go? So, like on this, we're very much aligned when it comes to social housing. I think it's majorly important, and I do hope that those places in the Eastgate do get used for people that genuinely need them, because you know when I was involved with the Conservative Party years ago, the one thing that they pulled me up on was that I believed in social housing. They didn't believe in it at all, which is fair enough. They've got an ideology which I didn't quite align with, and I understood why they felt the way they did. But at the same time, you get societal problems when you've got people living rough. And I think that, the foresight was lacking perhaps in the Eastgate purchase by not looking at all the merits of it. But I guess that's what scrutiny committees are for, right? To analyse the pros and cons of it.
Yeah, I mean, all of the stuff that went to scrutiny was in the report that went to cabinet, so it was all there available for Andy Barnes to look at and Sam Janae to look at and ask questions and to get answers. And on the night we had a guy from Montague Evans who was there at the cabinet meeting, able to give that expert opinion, but none of them asked any questions because it was in part two and it wasn't in public and it was behind closed doors, and therefore they got up and walked out of the meeting and never bothered to sit there and scrutinize it when they should have done. So again, what I'm saying to you is, regardless of whether it was, a week, 10 days, the council has lost the best chunk of £1 million that it's now got to find from somewhere. And if politics, if the govern is to choose, do you halve the bin tax for, or the grass tax for 12 months? Do you get yourself political assistance for the next 5 years? Or do you say, actually, we're going to drag our heels on an important decision, and in the end we're going to put that money into the pockets of these unscrupulous owners of these hostels and these bed and breakfasts? That to me is, if I'm sitting here looking at the budget and I'm thinking, right, okay, come on, I don't want us as a council spending money on crap. I want us to be looking at how we spend it on services that benefit our public. That is not a good one. I spoke to a girl today. I actually went and met her in Southend when she was living in one of these hostels with her kids. Awful. And she came to see me again today, and she's now thankfully in permanent accommodation. But in the same week, right, and this is going off on a tangent, but I read that the council was signed off on buying 48 affordable homes on a scheme in Billericay. Okay, maybe that's got merit to it. But I also know that the Chapelgate development, the private homes on the Chapelgate development, haven't sold. And so they're sat there empty. I know that the same is true on Church Road in my ward in St. Martin's and in Shepherd's Mews. They haven't sold. I know the same is true at Chowderton Hall Pub. So these are houses that are built, that are there, that are ready to go. Why are we not using the right to buy receipts to go and buy those properties off of Sempre Housing, so that we can then put some of our temporary accommodation people into those homes that are there ready to go? We could furnish them, they could be in them tomorrow if we wanted. It doesn't make sense to me, some of the decisions that are being made, whilst we have got this budget gap that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because again, I think back to 2024, Charlie, as the leader of the council, I think back to the cabinet meetings that I had. Every single cabinet meeting that I had, I was talking about temporary accommodation. And my challenge to the officers was, go and find me accommodation that is cheaper than hotels and bed and breakfast. I don't care if it's in borough, I don't care if it's out of borough. Bring me options. Let me see what there is, because we were on course over that by 2030, Basildon Council, we would have spent over £60 million just on hotels and bed and breakfasts. What a monumental fucking waste of money that is. And my argument to the officers was, if we're going to spend 60 million, we'll borrow it and we are going to buy property, which at the end of it, we can sell and we can put that money back. So we can either make a profit on it, as we did. So we bought the rail store building in Billericay as an example, 44 units there that is currently being used for temporary accommodation. So that's 44 people not costing us an arm and a leg in 20, it's about £27,000 a room in a hotel. They're not costing us that anymore. Instead, it's at the HRA level. So it's £13,000 housing benefit coming in that we're now spending. So the council's making a saving there. But when we no longer need those properties, we will sell them on the open market. And in that location in Billericay, the council will more than make its money back, and it will end up in profit. So for me, what I kept saying to the officers was, I'm not paying hotels and bed and breakfast is dead money. So buy me things or find me things we can buy that we have a sell on value, so we get our money back to pay the bank. And if we get any profit out of it, even better. Um, I thought that was a pretty basic commercial thing to do as a somebody who runs a business as well as being a counsellor. I thought that was a good thing to do, and that's why we did it. We did the deal in Dartford, we did the deal on the Row store in Billericay, we did a deal on the one unit in Wickford, and we were doing some other stuff as well. There isn't that urgency, mate. I'm reading these cabinet reports, and there's nothing on them, and you know if they're not if the politicians are not asking the officers to do things and come up with things, then they're just going to coast. And that to me feels like what we're doing. But I come back to my point that I started with. Last Tuesday we went and added £1 million pressure with the
Mm.
grass tax halving and this, and that's got to be found. And we've got 6 months to do it.
Some people might return to your earlier statement that you've got a £25 million um, saving fund, money in the kitty. They might just say, "Well, spend that then." Don't charge us for it. Don't put it on us and try and increase council taxes on stuff because one, you shouldn't be paying for. I mean, you shouldn't be paying to have your grass taken away. That's just ridiculous. I mean, my advice to people is to do what I've done, is just get AstroTurf and fuck it all off. If I'm completely honest, I mean, who wants to be cutting grass and then paying for the privilege of doing it? I mean, it's bad enough you have to cut grass. I mean, who wants to do that? And then it's like, all
Don't
right. By
don't
the way,
forget,
here's some. Go
don't
on.
forget, Reform UK, Sam Genet have promised that they're going to cut council tax by 5%.
And what's the figure that they'll have to find on that one?
So that's about 900 grand. So we're now
Yeah.
pushing towards 9 million that they're going to have
Well,
to
then,
find
well,
in order to do it. And my point, Charlie, is you're absolutely right. We could go and we could say we're going to use £9 million of reserves to smooth it over this year. But next year, there is a further £4 million gap. So next year, you don't have to find £8 million. You have to find £12 million next year because the reserve is just a one off. The overall costs are ongoing. So you then have to
councils need
find
to
12
just
million.
they just need to go back to basics, stop doing all this fancy extra stuff that councils seem to invest their times in, and just make things value for money. There were some good initiatives that have been brought out by the council, but then when you think about the cost of it, people wouldn't really want to pay it. I got to be honest. I mean, I don't know what the average council tax bill is in Basildon, but I can give you rough estimates, which I think is probably about what, £1,200 a year, £1,500 a year, roughly, right? So I mean, you ain't really, and you get taxed to cut grass, you get parking tickets if you park outside your front door because there's permit areas everywhere, and it's just, I mean, I could go on and on and on about it, but it's up to councillors like you to make those adjustments. Now, I want to talk about the new CEO because we've got a new CEO at Basildon Council. But before we get onto that, I do want to read out a couple of comments because before the show, I put out a post on Facebook saying, send us in some questions and we'll go through them. Unfortunately, guys, I don't have a way of bringing them up on the screen tonight because I prepared the show in a bit of a rush and I didn't get them all through. Plus, some of these are coming in live now. So I'll read out a couple. One from Peter Kelly. Hi, Charlie. Can you tell Gavin our neighbour is not standing in the shed anymore? He has taken to sitting on the bench. He will know what I mean.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Nothing to say back to Peter. Lee Cocker. We'll talk about him actually as well later on in the show because he's done something which I personally don't think will make a difference, but I'm sure Gavin will disagree with me. I don't think Lee, if you're watching, mate, I- you've wasted your time, in my opinion, respectfully. Um, Lee, as leader of the opposition, what do you believe the current administration is getting wrong? I mean, mate, watch the show. All Gavin does is slag them off. Um,
No, I criticized them intellectually.
what was okay? Well, someone's left an intellectual comment here. Tell Gavin he's a four-letter word. I won't read it out.
I love you too.
Yeah. And well, it is nice to get good and bad comments. I actually feel like when you get hate comments, they're actually more passionate than the people that like you, which does you a favour in the long run for pushing the message out there a little bit. Gary Stringer, upon reflection, Gavin, is there anything you wish you did, you wish you didn't do, or anything you didn't do, you wish you did do? I think that makes sense. I mean, I think it makes sense too, Gary. Gavin, does it make sense to you?
Say again.
Is there anything you wish you did but you didn't? And is there anything that you did that you regret? Is the nuts and bolts of that question.
Mm. Do I answer it now?
I mean, yeah, why not? That's the
Okay.
point, right?
So is there right, I don't sleep anymore because I've got a 3 week old baby. So the first part of that question is did I do anything that I Did I not do something that I wish I'd done? Is that right?
Yeah, so, do you regret not doing something, and then is there something that you did that you then regretted?
Yeah, I regret that I did not. At the end of year one, I went to something called UK Reef, which is a big regeneration conference in Leeds.
It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like something that you might hear drum and bass at.
No, it's not as exciting as that.
Yeah.
Trust me. No. And it's in Leeds as well. I shouldn't slag Leeds off. My other half is from Leeds. But what I should have done is I should have completely and utterly outsourced the regeneration team at Basildon Council.
Mm,
So to put it on steroids, I should have created a wholly owned company or whatever the kind of vehicle was, and I should have staffed it entirely with people whose job it was to just go and get things through planning, get finance in place, and get things built quicker. Because that would have taken away the opportunity for certain officers to be blockers.
mm.
And if I had done that, we would have got the planning application for the arena in before the election. And I suspect with my links into government, we would have had the funding in place for it as well. So
Are you are you are you gonna
that's my
are you
wish
gonna
again.
name and shame?
No, I'm called Gavin Callahan, not Sam Janae, so I don't go after officers on social media
Well,
um, unless they're not going to say it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm sending it out. I'm trying to read it. You said you like fish now. I'm trying to bait you a little bit.
yeah, but I can't see my fish. I don't know if they're still alive. But that's what I should have done that I didn't do. The thing that I did do that I shouldn't have done, everybody would tell me, is I shouldn't have written to the government outlining the capacity issues that we would have with LGR when it comes to the elections. Now, I don't think that would have made a blind bit of fucking difference, to be honest, in Basildon, but people will tell me that I shouldn't have done that. The other thing that I didn't do, that I did do that I shouldn't have done was um, uh, you make loads of mistakes. Like, there's no point denying it. Um, I don't know. I'd have to think about it a bit more, but I think maybe I should have brought in some more senior people quicker.
Mm,
If I'd have done that, would I have got rid of Morgan Sindel quicker? Maybe. If I had done it, would we have avoided the C4? Maybe. But then, to be honest with you, if I am being brutally honest with you, I kind of wanted us to get the C4. I know that's a perverse thing for a council leader to say, but I'm talking about the housing regulator giving the council C4 because it meant that for finally, after 2 years, no officer could stand in the way anymore. No one could defend the indefensible anymore. No one could make
right.
excuses anymore for Morgan Sindel. No one could try and say, well, no, actually, it does work and they're doing a good job and blah, blah, blah. Actually, it was there in black and white that the housing department was not fit for purpose, that the reforms that Andrew Schade had brought in 5 years before that had devastating consequences when it comes to downgrading KPIs and all the rest of it. So yeah, maybe if I'd have moved quicker on those appointments, we might have avoided some of the pitfalls. But and maybe this is maybe a controversial one. I don't know what you think about this. Maybe I communicated too much. Maybe maybe I should have. So it's always interesting to me about what Tories do when they control the council. Essentially, what Conservatives do is they put their head down and do fuck all. Right.
Mm.
And they just hope that no one notices. And that when it comes back to election time in 12 months' time, everyone goes, well, they haven't wound me up too much, so I'll vote for them. The problem is that all that happens is you're managing the decline of the place that you live, and nothing actually happens and no progress is made. But maybe I should have, done that and not communicated as much and not let
Do you
people
know what
see
you
my face as much.
you do get a lot of credit for being out there, and I think it's a positive thing because when people want to get something done, they've got somewhere to go. The people who work in the council are effectively nameless, faceless individuals at the end of a phone or at the end of an email, right? Most of the time, you never get to see those kinds of people. Um, but with politicians, you're kind of front and center. I suppose there is a downside to that because, people can praise you for being out in front, and they can also have a pop at you for being out in front. And even though you and I are on different ends of the political spectrum for the most part, we still get a fair share of stick. So I think that whilst it's good to be accountable, there's a risk attached to it nowadays where, you know, people want you, but then if you don't say the right thing in the right way, then they suddenly don't want you. And that's the one thing I find interesting about politics in general is how fickle the public can be, because like you could help a resident and you could help them out of the biggest situation they've ever been in. When it comes to houses, I want to put a comment up in a second by Tony Leverett that, and then we'll move on to the CEO. You could help them
Hey,
out of
Tone.
the darkest situation, and then once they've got what they wanted out of you, suddenly you're the biggest arsehole going, and they're going to vote for the opposition.
That
And
happens all the time.
yeah, and I find that really interesting. Not that I think you should go against your principles. If you're the man with the keys, you're going to be the guy that people come and speak to. That said, people have short memories in politics, and even I've experienced that myself. I once went above and beyond to save a young woman from going homeless with her children, and she was constantly singing my praises up until she got accommodation. And then she never spoke to me again. Walked past me in the
She
street as if
voted
she
for
didn't know
Chris
me.
Allen.
Well, I mean, if she walked past me in the street and didn't acknowledge me, then she must be thick as shit. So yeah, you're probably right. Right, Tony Leverett, a comment here. Um, why didn't you sort the temporary accommodation? You did nothing for the
Yes,
homeless then.
I
Tony's left a
love.
few comments, and people who are leaving
Sure, he
comments
has.
on Facebook and YouTube, etc. I am trying to bring them up without ruining the flow of the episode. So forgive me if you're waiting. I will try and bring up as many as I can. But this one, Tony, you've been quite persistent. So, Gavin, what do you think about Tony's comment here, mate?
It's lovely to hear from Tony. Last time he was shouting at me in the public gallery at Basildon Council, so it's nice to see him hear us this evening. What I would say, Tony, is I did more than any council leader before me for the last 25 years when it came to homelessness and temporary accommodation. And how do I know that? I can prove it. I did three things. First is I changed the accommodations policy on temporary accommodation, right, which was encouraging us to get out of bed and breakfasts and hotel uses. I then went and acquired over 400 units. We set a target of 500 over 3 years, but within 2 years, we'd already got to 400, and we were on course to be able to add more to the stock. Because I did that, it meant that every single family that had children were out of hotel and bed and breakfast accommodations within 6 weeks. So we were meeting the statutory deadline, which was not happening before I became the leader of the council. So we added to the stock, we changed the policy, we got families back out. We actually ended up getting more families with children in temporary accommodation into permanent accommodation within the borough via the council house waiting list. Then I think by the end, it was pretty much everybody who had been in TA for over 6 months at that point had been in receipt of permanent accommodation offers. So that is a positive that we did. The second thing we did was that we built 300 brand new council houses whilst I was the leader of the council. And the most obvious of those is the ones opposite the BP garage in the town centre, 70 flats in Chapelgate that went up. They went up in about 9 months because Keir Starmer gave us 11.5 million quid to get them over the line. My former head of the leader's office got that money out of the government. We then got it into Sempra, and we were able to get those homes built at Chapelgate and elsewhere across the borough. We added 300 brand new council homes to the stock. In terms of homelessness, I also changed the grant criteria and I've changed the grant policies. So therefore, if you were living in your property, if you were in the private rented sector, but you were struggling to make up, so say for example, your rent was £1,500 a month, but you could only afford £1,000, I changed the homelessness grant criteria to mean the council could step in and help subsidise some of that so that you could stay in your private accommodation. Because if you ended up getting kicked out and you turn up at the council needing temporary accommodation, all that happens then is we have to pay £27,000 a year to house you in a hotel or in a hostel, which is totally counterproductive. So we changed that. We also ran the shelters throughout the winter every year, which is something I set up back in 2017 when I became the leader of the council the first time. So I got a lot of things wrong, Tone, when it came to being the leader of the council. But when it came to temporary accommodation, when it came to homelessness, when it came to council house building, I see my record and I raise you, my friend, because there isn't a council leader that's touched me when it comes to it. And so far, what you've seen from this administration that you are so keen to support all over social media on a daily basis is sweet FA when it comes to temporary accommodation and what they're doing. So I think your best bet now is to get back on Sam Genet's feed and ask him what is he and Andy Barnes actually doing to reduce the temporary accommodation cost that you and me are paying for out of our council tax every year.
Well, there we go. I think you've got an answer there, Tony. And isn't it interesting that when you ask a nice question, you get a nice answer? And if you are one of those heckling people in the council, it ain't hard just to be nice, is it? Ain't hard just to say, Gavin, can you answer my question, please, mate? I'm sure this will be turned into a conspiracy by someone. But there we
Iggy,
are. Maybe. I've not heard from Miggy this week. Do you know what I'd like to do? I'd actually like to get all of the back. Let's call them the back benchers. Let's call them that, right? So the back benchers in the public gallery. Let's get them all on and have a complete conspiracy fest, and you can just go, mate, you're nuts, mate, you're crazy. This ain't true, and then it's done.
think I'll be on holiday that week.
Well, the internet is global, man. It's global. Right, let's go. Let's move on. There we go. I'm back again. Let's move on from the hecklers in the council chamber. We do have a new CEO who I had the fortune of bumping into a meeting not too long ago in Basildon Town Centre. Julian Ellaby, very nice guy from what I can make out. Very well put together guy. Gavin, he says he's excited to share that he's taken on the interim chief executive role at Basildon. Does that mean he's not here for long?
Who knows, Charlie? I didn't know anything about this until 20 to 8 on the Tuesday when we were sat in the council chamber and all councillors were passed a piece of paper saying that there was going to be an emergency item added to the full council meeting, that the chief executive was leaving and that Julian Ellaby was going to be taking over as the interim chief executive. I'm not sure why such discourtesy was shown to group leaders for something like this. Usually, we would all be given an email in advance of the meeting or a phone call in advance of the meeting to let us know what the plan was. But such courtesy was not
So hold
extended
hold
to
on.
us on this
No,
occasion.
nobody was informed this was happening. So Andy Barnes,
Only
yourself,
Sam and Andy Barnes knew.
interesting. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. So what you try to do in these situations when you are appointing what's called statutory officers, the three legal officers, the head of paid service, which is the chief executive, the chief finance officer, and the chief legal officer. You try to get consensus in the room. You try to get all 42 members on board. But sadly, on this occasion, that wasn't possible because we weren't told about this. And also, when you read the report that got sent to us, it didn't include anything about the money. So I haven't got a clue how much this guy's being paid. I haven't got a clue what his terms and conditions are. I haven't got a clue if this is a saving and he's on these same salaries on now, but he's just acting up. Um, there was nothing in the report in front of us in relation to finance. And equally, there was nothing in the report in relation to Julian's CV. Now, I know Julian's CV because I appointed him to his current position that he's in now. And there was a handful of councillors, 5 or 6 councillors, that were on the appointments committee that appointed him to his current position now. But for most of the councillors,
Excuse me, sorry. What do you mean you appointed him to his current position? What do you mean? Because you said you didn't know.
so when you get to a certain level in a council, an assistant director or an executive director, you have to go through an appointments committee of councillors at the council. That's a cross-party committee. So back
Right.
in November or whenever it was, Julian applied to be the executive director for strategy or whatever his title is. and so his CV was presented to the five councillors that were on the appointments committee. That was me, Kerry Smith, Andy Barnes, Adele Brown, and Alan Ball from the Wickford Independents at the time. So we got to read his CV, so we know his background, but none of the other councillors do. And so none of that was presented to councillors for them to have a look at and to see whether he's qualified or not for the job. So even though I know Julian is qualified and I like Julian and I think he'll be, um, you know, well, I don't think he'll do well because I don't think that this is possible at this moment in time at Basildon, and that is a shame to say that. But I think he is destined to fail in this job. But my point is that out of principle, I was not going to have my councillors vote for somebody when all of that detail was missing. Because could you imagine if in 6 months' time, if this has all gone Pete Tong, if it's all gone wrong, if the best value inspectors are sat there going, well, why on earth did you appoint this guy when you've just got into intervention? Looking at that report that was presented to us, there's not an awful lot in there that could give councillors comfort as to why they were doing what they were doing. So, yeah, that was a shame in terms of the process. And I also think, as I said, nice guy, intelligent, good background,
Yeah.
not got a prayer of
No.
fixing this.
See. When I met him, he did seem like he was very switched on. Really nice guy. Seems like he's got a good heart. From the brief chat I had with him, maybe 25 minutes I shared with him. Um, One thing I want to ask you is that because you've got such political disarray, now it looks like you've got, you know, disarray in the paid services inside the council. So Gary Jones was the CEO. He's now left. I mean, where has he gone? Number one. Number two, you weren't told that Julian was going to be appointed. Julian Ellaby was going to be appointed. So what is going on? So you've got complete, um, you know, craziness in the political chamber. You've got no direction behind the scenes. I mean, this doesn't really fill me with much confidence as to what the next year or two's going to hold for the council.
Yeah, it's chaos. And
It
and
is.
and this go back to our first round of podcasts, Charlie, when I said to you that you carry on with me and the regeneration and all that kind of stuff, or you vote for a council of chaos. And you know,
Mm.
check out my cover photo on Facebook, right? But Gav was right. Because I
Gavin is the oracle.
oh, and listen, it didn't take an awful lot, right? But there was
I mean,
there was
to be
no
fair, Gavin had bias, right? So you had bias by saying what you said. I don't have a bias, even though I am politically more right wing. I'm not actually flying a flag for anybody, and I completely agreed that there was going to be a council of chaos. I didn't use that phrase, but I get the sentiment, and I completely agreed with that because you've got people who, I mean, Andy Barnes. All due respect to him, he's come out the woodwork out of nowhere and taken over from the zombification that is Andy Baggett, and then you've got Sam Janae who's just barged his way into the room saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me, give me a chain, give me some more money, look at me, look at me." Um, and again, not criticised him for getting the money, but that's just the way it's gone. It does appear that the council is now being run by people who just want to say they're doing something. It's like I've got a title, I've got a badge, I've got a few letters before and after my name. Whereas you actually had an idea, and I don't want to keep blowing your trumpet for you because I get accused of that often enough in the comments. It's just my honest opinion. It's just my genuinely held opinion that the council would have been in better shape if we'd have stuck to the plan. So you've got a non-leadership politically, you've now got. Well, I don't want to say you've got non-leadership with Julian because we just don't know. But I mean, if you're watching this right now and you're just finding this out for the first time, and you're talking about council tax going up and cuts here and there, I mean, I just wouldn't bother paying it no more.
but well, look, the reality is, mate, that it's not hyperbole anymore, is it? You're seeing it.
Mm,
I always talked on these podcasts about how every day you're in office, you're closer to the end, right? You have to make every single day count. You have to approach this whole thing with a a degree of speed and rapidity that you want to get things done and you want to make change happen. We are approaching the 3 month mark, right? That means that a quarter of the year is over, and I can't tell you what this administration is seeking to do. I can't. Um, they've just put out a thing today about free car parking. What a load of rubbish, right? Absolute rubbish, and we'll talk about that on another podcast. But behind the scenes, they can't even get anything as basic as they've clearly had a row with the chief executive Gary Jones, right? It is obvious to everybody. He disappeared. He didn't. He wasn't around. He wasn't asking questions, answering questions. He wasn't replying to emails. And then I find out from the municipal journal, the magazine, the local government magazine. I find out reading the municipal journal on the day the council has been placed into intervention that Gary Jones has left the council and has got a job at the London Borough of Bexley. That's how I appointed Gary Jones. I was the leader of the opposition. I am the joint largest group on Basildon Council. If there was a reconfiguration or by-elections or whatever, I might end up being the largest group on Basildon Council, right? For all they know. And I'm not given the courtesy of being told that the chief executive officer is leaving the council. And Julian Allaby is being promoted. I wasn't given the courtesy of finding that out. So the first question that I had for him was, so when did you know about this? When did all of this happen? And why was I not told? So that proves that behind the scenes there's just chaos. There's not leadership. There's chaos going on. And you have to decide in these roles, a bit like Andy Burnham, right? Yeah, Andy Burnham's been Prime Minister as a week. Julian Allaby's been Chief Executive for a week. Andy Burnham's come in and he said, right, the purge of the Starmerites. I'm getting rid of all the dead wood. I'm getting rid of all the people that have failed for the last 2 years and the things that have been going wrong. Axe gone. We're having a fresh start. This is my leadership. We're having a fresh start. Guarantee you, guarantee you that we will sit here in 2 months' time and Mark Greenberg will still be the monitoring officer, causing all manner of problems, pouring fuel on the fire, making all kinds of issues for councillors. I
Mm.
guarantee you that we will be sat here and there will be no policies going to cabinet that are any good, that show a vision, that show what's going on. Guarantee you we will not be getting any inward investment. It will just tick over more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. And that, I think, is a real crying shame. If you're a new administration, you have every right to change the chief executive. In my opinion, what should happen is that if there is a change of administration, the chief executive should tender their resignation. And it should therefore be up to the new administration if they want to keep the chief executive on or if they want new leadership for the council.
But who's going to do that? I mean, if you're on
No, I'm
200
saying
grand
it
a
should be the
year.
law. That should be the law.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, the thing is, when you've got a council like ours, and the power changes every year or two because of the way that the elections run in thirds, doesn't that create more uncertainty
We should
every
outlaw
election?
thirds. Yeah, we should outlaw
Well, I
thirds.
agree. I agree with that actually. Yeah, we should outlaw thirds. I think it's a ridiculous system, but I'm not entirely sure that you can ask somebody to resign just because
I
you
think
know
it should be, yeah, but it should be a fixed term contract, shouldn't it? So it should be that you are there and you're appointed for a 4 year period. And that, if you have your contract extended for a further 4 years, that's great. But I think all this nonsense about paying off chief executives £200,000 a year at a time to get them out the door and all the solicitors fees, I just think all of that is absolute rubbish and complete nonsense. And I think the other thing as well is if Andy Barnes wanted to change the chief executive, he could do that. I haven't got a problem with that. I've done it. He's perfectly entitled to do it. But there are ways of doing it where you have to communicate that, where you have to be clear and open and honest and transparent about it. That's not what's happened here. So
okay, so
already
you said
Julian
you
is
asked
coming in under a cloud.
you said that you asked Julian a question about when did he know all about this when he was appointed. Are you able to tell us the answer to the question?
He knew over a week before the paper went to cabinet,
Right.
which
So
which again doesn't fill me with confidence that the
no, but
culture
then
in that place
who
is
made that
changing.
call? Who made that decision though? Did he tell you that?
Well, it would have been the leader of the council. Andy Barnes would have made the decision that he was going to appoint him. But my point of that is, it's not up to Andy to pick the phone up and tell other group leaders, right? That's not the job of the politicians. But if you've known for over a week that you were going to become the chief executive, why do you leave it until 20 to 8 on the night where there is a vote taking place before you tell everybody and then expect them to all go and put their hand up and vote for it? When all of this key information, like their CV, like the finances, all the rest of it, is omitted from the report that is in front of councillors. I
But
just,
I think it's a sharp disrespect because, like you said,
completely.
Andy Barnes knew and the mayor knew. So two people that would have been able to whip their group into voting a certain way or groups into a certain way would have just been, which makes your input redundant. And with all due respect, your input would have been made redundant by the votes. But I suppose
But do you know what it would
it's
have
a bit
done,
like
Charlie?
splitting hairs and crying over spilt milk. But you see the
But
point.
yeah, I do. But do you know that the thing that is slightly different in a hung council is it might have also um, it might have also become a situation where that officer may have questioned themselves whether or not taking the job was the right thing to do. And what
Mm,
I mean by that is if they could not command the respect and the votes of all 42 members of the council and all political groups, I know a number of chief executives that will say, I'm not taking the job. I'm coming in and I want to work for all 42 members. I want to be there for all 42 members and the rest of it. I still have very, very serious questions about governance, about legality, about lawfulness of decision making. I get accused of all sorts of stuff. I've got very serious questions that I have raised with the previous chief executive. I am led to believe, and again, as I sit here and we record this at 5 to 11 on a Monday night, Charlie, I don't know if he works for Basildon Council anymore. So I don't know if Gary Jones is on gardening leave or if he's still available to answer my questions that I have. So when the government inspectors come and they interview me and they ask me questions about governance and about the legality and the lawfulness of decision making, I can tell you none of this happened under me. None of
mm,
this happened under me. You knew what the chain of command was when I was the leader of the council. This is a complete mess. Andy Barnes has sod off on holiday, so he's not even around to answer any questions about it. Sam Janae doesn't know what day of the week it is half the time, and then Julian Ellaby is apparently now the chief executive, but it's a mess, a complete mess. So if you're a resident, if you're a councillor, if you're sat there with serious questions, this council's chaos, mate. Absolute chaos. And
mm.
and again, I like Julian, and I think he's a nice guy. He hasn't got a prayer of sorting this out.
Well, I hope that I hope that he prays to all the churches and all the gods. Then, if that's your analysis.
Only one.
There is only one. Yeah, Charlie Sansom. Pray to me. Right, I got a comment here that asks, hope both of you are good. Can you see a conservative reform fallout sooner or later? Maybe some officers getting between each other. Going between each other? Getting? No, going. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it was interesting last week as well at the council meeting. It's our third council meeting since the AGM, and
Mm,
already you can see splits appearing. So Reform voted differently to the Conservatives on a couple of occasions. The Reform group actually split off from Janae and voted
yep.
differently on a couple of occasions. Andy Barnes couldn't get his group to vote the same way on something as basic as flags. Um, and as I said, we're heading towards the difficult stuff now. The fluffy stuff is over. The AGM. Let's give everyone a frock and a necklace and shake hands and tell everybody they're all wonderful. Here's your SRA. Here's your SRA. But I'm telling you now, we are heading. Everybody knows in local government that the meat of your work is done September, October, November. Right, that's where your budget has to be drafted. That's where you've really got to make some tough decisions through cabinet. There's no chance. There's no chance that Reform UK are going to go and vote for £8 million worth of cuts. There's no way that's going to happen. So, yeah, I
Mm,
think what you'll find, we had it with the local plan. Obviously, that got taken off of us last week by the government as well. The council was incapable of making big decisions. And as a consequence of that, what you'll soon find is that Sam Janae will take to social media one day. You won't know it's coming. It will just be on the top of his head. And he'll go on social media and say, Andy Barnes is weak. He's a terrible leader. We can't do business with him. The Tories need to find themselves a new group leader if we're going to carry on our supply and confidence arrangement.
hmm Yeah, I
won't
mean
be long.
that's completely predictable. I think that whilst I personally would have taken the power afforded to me um, after the election and become leader if I was Sam, I do feel like there is an advantage here for him with this. I've got a comment here from Zoe Williams: 3 months and they've done sod all, and it's like a three-ring circus to which all parties are not included. No courtesy and a lack of remembering what they have done themselves in chamber. I agree with that. SJ, Sam Genet, I'm sure that's a reference to, is an absolutely ridiculous man with little to no clue about what the F he is supposed to be doing, sat in his gold dog chain. We're a laughing stock. Well,
Your meme's caught on, isn't it?
do you know what? He didn't like that. I got to be honest.
Post it
He
again.
wasn't. Who's holding the leash this time? Yeah, he didn't like that at all, actually. And talking of not liking it at all, I'm sure like this either. I don't know what's happening with me. Every time I change a scene, it cuts me out. Anyway, so for the first time in 2 years, Reform UK are not polling top. I'm sure this is great news for you, Gavin, and I'm sure it's great news for members of your party. But again, it goes back to the point about things being fickle. Do you think that the Burnham bounce is similar to the Boris bounce, where people kind of got this optimistic, reappraisal of the politician in question, and now this is maybe an artificial poll, or do you actually think that this is going to be momentum building for Labour and perhaps Reform are on the decline?
I certainly think it's the latter, if I'm being honest with you. I think my impression, Charlie, of the public right now is that they want change and they don't care what the color rosette is that delivers it. And
Mm,
they want something fundamentally different to what has gone on before. And what what I think has really been quite lazy in some of the analysis is I heard Sam Coates on Sky News today interviewing the Prime Minister. And I mean, Sam Coates, the last time Andy Burnham was an MP, Sam Coates would have probably been a junior reporter at the Times or something. And now he's the deputy political editor at Sky News. And he's talking to Burnham as if he's just turned up in Westminster.
mm,
Like people forget, Andy Burnham was elected in 2001. He was the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. He was the Secretary of State for Health. He was the Shadow Education Secretary. He was the Shadow Health Secretary. He ran for the Labour leadership twice. He's been the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and now he's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This is not a novice. This is
mm,
a guy who has been around the block and who understands what he's doing. And you know what? And I was thinking about this when I was walking my dog last night, and I thought, I'm so glad that the age of this nonsense that has it's always been leveled at me and it's been leveled at other people, that we all hate career politicians, that the country needs to get away from career politicians, right? I could not walk into a school and teach 30 children how to pass their GCSEs because 20 years ago I went to school, right? I could not walk into a police station and solve a homicide because I've watched every episode of Line of Duty. The idea that Rishi Sunak could walk in from being an investment banker and become prime minister, that Boris Johnson could walk in from being a journalist to becoming prime minister, the idea that Keir Starmer could walk in from
and you,
being a
you,
prosecutor and
yeah.
become prime minister is a nonsense, right?
Well,
And it's
you
been
did put out a
proven.
bit of experience there.
What,
Boris
Boris?
Johnson was mayor of London.
Okay, so he was the mayor of London for 10 minutes before he became the leader of the Conservative Party. He didn't even complete a second term as the mayor of London before he went back to try and become prime minister. Was a crap secretary of state for foreign affairs and was even worse as prime minister. My point, Charlie, is that we finally have somebody who is actually skilled in politics, who understands that politics is not a dirty word. It's actually a source of hope and it can actually be a source of good and it can get some stuff done this week, right? And again, I don't know whether they'll put this into the budget. I'm not privy to this information, right? But the talk about having a land value tax abolishing council tax and stamp duty in order to have a land value tax, which means that if you're living in an average four-bedroom house in Basildon right now, which is about £600,000 in local money, that means that your council tax bill will be cut every single month by about 80 quid. That your land value will be about £2,800 a year, and it will be cut. If you're living in a £6 million house on Norsey Road in Billericay, yeah, you're going to go from paying a council tax bill of about £4,000 a year to paying a land value tax of about £24,000 a year, right? But the chances are, if you're living in a £6 million house in Norsey Road in Billericay, you're probably not on a salary. You're probably owning assets worth a fair amount of money. And my
Y-
point is that to the average man and woman on the street, we now have a prime minister who is actually saying, yeah, council taxes, you said earlier on councils are becoming bloated. I agree with that. I used to draw a stick man on my board in my office, and I used to put lines off of it to my chief finance officers saying, all you want to do is fleece that guy for as much money as you can get. And at what point do we say enough is enough? Right? I used to draw it I wish I'd taken photos of it. Parking charges. We're going to hike up the cost of going to play five-a-side football. We're going to hike up the cost of going to a leisure centre. We're going to do this. We're going to do whatever it might be. We've finally got a prime minister now saying we've got to abolish it. Got to totally rethink how we do that stuff.
But it's
And
not a genuine abolishment, is it?
it is because what it will mean is that it will be a cheaper system for people. People will have more flexibility in their life. So, one of the things that is holding back this borough right now, particularly on something like social housing, right, adding to the housing stock, people who are living in 4 or 5 bedroom houses, older people, are desperate to move. They're desperate to
Mm,
downsize into a 1 bedroom house or a 2 bedroom house, but they don't want to go and spend £30,000 on stamp duty, right? Why would they? It's dead money,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no one wants to go and do it. So in the end, they sit there and go, "Do you know what? We're going to stick it out in our 4 or 5 bedroom house." What if you abolish stamp duty? All of a sudden, they can move. The young family who bought the two up, two down, about two young children. Ideally, they'd love to have a third child. They would love to expand their family. We should be as a country pro family. We should be pro all that. But they're sitting there going, if we're going to move, if we're going to have a third child, we're going to have to move house, and we can't afford 30 grand on stamp duty, so we can't do it. We can't take the equity out of the house and still have enough for a deposit if we take that money out. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, they'll be able to move. The economy will start to move again. When we talk about growth and growing the economy, these are the kind of measures that people like me were pleading with Starmer and Reeves to be doing 2 years ago that they bottled, and they just didn't do it. And now you've got a prime minister who is sat there going, "Yeah, no, we're going to totally rethink 40 years of this because it's been crap." And and also, I think he's proven in his first week in charge exactly who he is for. Like he's not about the elites. He's not about just people on benefits. He's about the man and woman who work hard, play hard, want to have a few pints on a Saturday, want to go to the football, want to get 2 weeks on holiday, want to look after their families, want to look after their kids, and who are sitting there right now thinking our country can be better than this. That it's not ungovernable. That there are things that the government can, the levers that the government can pull. And I just think, how amazing has it been to actually have a prime minister who's really positive and who's not sitting there going, "Oh, it's going to get worse before it gets better. To strap in," which is what we got off Starmer 2 weeks after he got the job. So yeah, I
No,
think this poll is a sign of things to come. I really do.
I do appreciate your enthusiasm, but I do have a few questions regarding the land tax because if like so, there's one thing that made me raise an eyebrow to this was who actually pays it. Because is it going to be the landlords themselves, the homeowners themselves, or will it be passed on? Because many people live in rented accommodation. So if let's say, for example, you live in a council home, we've spoken about council homes quite a lot tonight. If you live in a council house, are you paying a land value tax, or is the landlord, aka Basildon Council, paying that? That needs clarification because I think that some people might be thinking, well, what am I paying a land value tax? Not even my land. I'm paying a tax on this. And whilst I do agree council tax needs a complete top-down review, one thing that I don't think is very fair is having a tax levied on people based on the value of their house because I think that progressive taxation systems actually penalise success. So if you do live in a house like you mentioned, Norsey Road, right? You mentioned their tax might go up from 4 grand to 24 grand. I'm not being funny, but what are you getting for 24 grand? You ain't getting fuck all for 4 grand. Now you want to give me 20 grand plus on top of that. What are you getting for that? Those are questions that I think most people will be looking at going, well, if I'm going to pay all that, what I want, I want to be welcomed into the council offices with a fucking red carpet, and I want a trumpet, and I want, Sam to sing Kumbaya, my lord, every time I walk past him, because you ain't going to get no value for that 24 grand. You and I both know that because the structures of the councils and the way they're run all need to be changed. So whilst I do welcome a look at this, who's actually liable for it? Will people actually think, do you know what, bollocks, I'm not paying it? Because if I got a 24 grand bill to pay Basildon Council, you can take me to court. I ain't fucking paying it.
But this is the reality, though, isn't it? You're not going to get a 24 grand a year bill because, as far as I understand it, you're not in a position to own a £6 million house on Norsey Road,
No, but
right?
the principle is what I'm arguing.
Yeah, but my
I'm
point to
arguing
you
the principle.
is it not about time that we had a system in the country where, I pay more council tax living in my house in Basildon than somebody living in a multi-million-pound house in Kensington and Chelsea, right? That is a fact right now. The £355 a month that I pay in council tax is more than somebody living in a multi-million-pound house in Kensington and Chelsea. That is a cocked up system where
I
we are in
agree.
that situation. I had a long conversation with Ian Mackenzie, who used to work for me at the council, was formerly the special advisor to the former Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott. He was telling me that one of the big fights that Labour government had was with the blob about trying to get rid of the current bandings for council tax. So council tax bandings have not changed since 1992. It's run by the Valuations Office. It's not run by councils. It's not run by central government. And what the Secretary of State, John Prescott, wanted to do was he wanted to abolish those bandings and he wanted to completely redo them because his argument was that in some places, you said that paying tax based on the value of your land, or you pay tax now based on the value of the property, but the property value is overinflated and it's ridiculous, right? In our part of the world. So I end up paying similar amounts of money, but it doesn't go up enough. There are not additional bans on those properties. And yet, again, to govern is to choose. Do you say to the tens of millions of people that are in the kind of the bracket where they're currently paying three and a half, £4,000 a year for their council tax bill, that we and everybody under that, all the way down, that we're going to reduce your council tax and we're going to reduce the amount that you're paying, and we're going to give you more flexibility to move and go up the ladder or down the ladder, depending on what you want to do. And in order to pay for that, the kind of 10% of the people that live in astronomically wealthy properties, who themselves are probably owning more than one property and who are probably quite well off, as I say, they are going to be asked to pay more as a consequence. Now, I think that, again, this all has to be worked out. You're right. What happens to council homes? What happens to properties where you rent? I know that when I've rented properties in the past, sometimes your council tax and the utility bills have been included in your rent or amount. Other times you have to cover those costs as well. So it's one of those things where I'm already paying council tax on the property, even though I don't own it. So what's the difference between paying the land value tax? The difference is it will be cheaper for me. So that might be a good thing rather than a penalising thing. All of that has to be worked through. And listen, he might not do it. It might not appear in the budget, and he might turn around and say it's not what we're going to go with. But I just think for me, it's that fact that we've finally got a prime minister who's having these conversations, and you know, all that Farage has got is conversations about small boats. All Farage has got is division, anger, everything's broken, the country's not working, it's all terrible. I don't really know what Kemi's got, to be honest. I have to say, I heard her do a speech this week, and she said something about how's it all being paid for, blah blah blah. And I have to be honest with you, Charlie. Right, the conversations I'm having with people, like the punters in Basildon, I don't. I think the age of them all sitting there going, we need austerity because we've got to live within our means and all the rest of it. I think people are saying bollocks to it. We want change. and we don't care
Mhm.
what it costs now. We don't care. Give us change. Make our lives better. Make the lot that we're living with, make it better. And I think the Tory argument that everything is about the pound and the pence, I don't think that's where the public is at. And I think they might realise that part of the reason they lost so heavily in 24 was because they'd lost sight of the fact that actually it is the job of government to try and make things better, not make everything worse. Um, so look, I think he's started strong. I think that I'm not surprised we've got a 4 point bounce in the polls. I think Reform are in decline. I do. I think we probably are seeing the end of Farage. And is there anybody else within Reform who could come and take over from him? Genric maybe, but he's a bit of a lemon, to be honest with you. I can't see that he's got the same appeal as the public. Will Richard Tice keep funding the party if Farage is not there? I don't know.
Hold on.
Um,
Will the Cottrell family keep funding the party if Farage is
ah,
not there?
the great aristocratic family, the Cottrells, did you
Mm,
mean? Who
mm.
they've known for 50 years. We are. But they're fighting the establishment. Yeah, so we'll see. And I think the Tory party, I mean, we see locally with our Tory MPs just how bad they are. So I don't think they're any great shake. So yeah, look, I think the general election is there for the taking for Labour. I really do in a few years' time. But he's got to be big, he's got to be bold, and he's got to go for it. And Tony, you're absolutely right, my friend. We do need change, and that change is Andy Burnham, and it's also me coming back to lead Basildon Council, isn't it?
I'll await the next comment. I'll put that up. Tony, if you write one more, I'll put it up straight away before we wrap up tonight, because I'm looking at the time thinking this is a long one tonight. But um, do I like Andy Burnham from what I've seen so far? Yes. Um, I think at least he's coming up with ideas. I haven't seen anything like you say from the Conservatives. I mean, I did watch a press conference not too long ago that Kemi held, and it was an attempt at copying Farage, and it just didn't land the way she hoped. And well, I guess without these ideas coming through, there isn't really much to go for. And I think the biggest concern that people had, and I said this, when people were talking about Andy Burnham standing for Parliament and being, parachuted into number 10, I said, I don't know why people on the right wing are getting so upset about this, because if Keir Starmer goes, it's just someone else. It's just another Labour politician who's going to be given the keys to power. So nothing really much changes, and that was a very cynical outlook on my part. But maybe Burnham will do something for the Labour Party, um, and maybe they'll have their fortunes turned around. Because as far as I'm concerned, Keir Starmer was pretty bad. I didn't see much positivity from him at all, and there's many things that I'd like to slag him off about, but I won't do it tonight because, um, well, we ain't got time. A few more comments. You'll like this one, Gavin. We need you back, Gavin. Oh my God, Gavin, look, Paula Ann, we need you back. Yeah, I, I,
It's a lot.
I'll, I'll, I'll,
Speaks a lot of sense.
I'll agree if Gavin gives me an 80 grand job being his political assistant. Until then,
I'm
uh,
abolishing them on day one of a Labour
oh yeah.
administration.
What you're going to replace it with a political action tax?
Head
Um,
of Leader's office.
tax. Just I'm going to add tax to everything you say now. Um, Mickey Brennan. There might be a vested interest here for him. Scrap stamp duty. Uh,
Yeah, I heard the Prime Minister say today that it's not going to be anytime soon. So if people are in the process of completing, they should crack on. But I think the budget is due in October. And yeah, again, I think I've said it to you before that the current house building rate in Basildon, sorry, the current house sale rate in Basildon on new developments, it would take 43 years to sell properties at the moment. Nobody is moving, no one's buying, the prices are not there, the incentives are not there. People can't make the equity in their house stretch far enough to be able to get a deposit and pay the stamp duty. So that's a massive, massive flaw in the system, and something does need to be done about it. So we wait and see what he comes up with.
hmm Then we've got another comment here. I said I'll put him up next. Tony Leverett. Change is needed.
Can I ask though, like just as a general point of thumb, because Tony just battered me online for 2 years. I mean, I got your bins back to weekly. I turned your street lights on. I reintroduced your crunches. I built 300 brand new council homes. I got 400 new temporary accommodation units. I was regenerating your town centre. You see it coming out of the ground. I got abolished Essex County Council and got the whole thing ready to go. What did change need to look like in order for you to accept that we were changing and we were on the road to something bigger and better than we were currently on? Because it feels to me like it was change just to get me out. Okay, well done, big tick. But now you want to change to go back to everything that I was doing, just not with me doing it. That's kind of not how it works.
Maybe you had a point about talking too much to people in the public domain. Maybe that's what it was, mate.
Mm.
Um, Paula Ann says, "I don't sound like that, Charlie. I know. I don't know what you sound like. Come on the show, we'll find out." Um, let's go for a couple more. Mickey Brennan again. I think he wants a conversation with you here. Mickey, get your own show. It used to be a cost to factor in your move before now. It's the main cost in some cases. Now, for context, Mickey owns the business Gibson and Brennan in Basildon. You may have seen his signpost around, so he is an estate agent.
Does he
So
want
there's a
to
bit of
sponsor the podcast?
I mean, I did put it to him about that, but despite making loads and loads of money selling houses, he's as tight as a duck's arse. So unfortunately, not. I said I'd give him a good deal,
Should
but
we mention Balgores and the others now just to annoy him?
yeah, yeah, Bairstow Eves. What's the other one? Heart. Yeah, I mean they're pretty good, right? Heart.
Wasn't there Quirks as well? But I think that went under.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if that's got a connection to my mate Russell.
Don't know. Don't know.
It might have. I don't know. I know that Russell works in properties. Um, right. What's on the agenda this coming week at the council? I want you to wrap up and tell us what we can expect. Um, we got through the bins. We've got through Burnham coming in. We've spoken about the land tax, but I think we're going to come back to that because I want to find out more about it. Um, and we do need to talk about the local plan in next week's episode and why we've lost power and authority over determining what happens in our borough. So next week, this week, what's happening?
Yeah, so obviously the council now is kind of, because it's the school holidays, it's sort of winding down its business in terms of public meetings. So there isn't that many meetings that are being scheduled. But we know that the intervention is apparently kicking off. So at some point we should start to meet these commissioners and have conversations with them about all things Basildon Council and what's going on. Who knows? I might open my inbox tomorrow to find that there might be another chief executive coming into the council. Who knows? Because things are changing and are so chaotic from one week to the next. Um, and yeah, it's we'll probably. I mean, you and I probably will log on to Facebook and learn things about ourselves every day, based on whatever conspiracy theory is out there at any given moment. It's always a dangerous time, except July
Mm,
and August, because politicians are bored, and so what tends to happen is they go on social media to lie and make things up, which we kind of saw last week, and I suspect we might see a bit more of that over the
I
coming
don't, I
weeks
don't, I don't, I
as
don't think
well.
you need sunshine for that. Um, Paula Ann, you know me. Yes, sorry. The screen that I'm looking at right now is very small, so I can't see your face. Sorry. Yes, I do know who you are. Apologies. Um, Mickey says, "Drop me out, boys." Okay, fine. We're gonna go straight on to. Hang on, Eddie's added to the conversation. We can get sponsorship from Kingswood Estates.
They're my favourite.
There we go. Term English. Any more we've got going on? Um, right. I think we've got through most of the comments. Gavin, thanks a lot for spending another Monday night with me, and thank you for everyone who's stayed with us to watch the show as well. Um, I've enjoyed this. Do send me more questions though. Do send Gavin more questions because if we get them and we get them in time, I'll put them on the screen and we can have a good conversation. Also, as we're closing up, should we just put it out there, Gavin? Throw caution to the wind. Should we just see if Sam wants to come on the show?
Listen, he will never do it.
Should we try it? Should we see? Because
Listen,
I guarantee Sam is watching now,
of course he is. He's
and I
obsessed
wouldn't
with
be
me.
surprised if I get a text immediately after this ends saying, "Get me on." Um,
Listen,
but
the
whether he would,
reality is, if anybody wants to come on the show, we will allow them onto our show. Of course we will. But this is the thing: if you're going to come on, you have to talk about policy. You have to answer questions. Like, don't get me wrong, I've sat here for 2.5 hours tonight. I sat here for 2.5 hours. I'll answer questions. I'll answer whatever people, and you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, you can think I'm talking bollocks, you can think I'm saying the legitimate stuff, whatever. But no one can accuse me of not sitting here and answering questions, detailed questions, and knowing my onions about how councils work and how the finances work and all the rest of it. If people want to do it, then you can. But expect that if you come on this show, we're going to challenge you. We are going to ask you serious questions. We're going to want to know what your answers are, and very quickly these people will melt. Which is why they will
Well, let's
prefer to sit there with a Chat GPT speech without telling them what they're supposed to say, and that's where we are.
we're trying to get them on, right? You can't slag them off before they turn up. Let's
But again,
give them a
what
shot.
what 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 are they going to come on here and do? It's going to be conspiracy theory. It's going to be salacious. It's going to be
But
about
this is the
this,
thing, right?
that, the rest of it.
I think people watching this can pretty much agree with what I'm about to say, that I don't always give you a good episode. Like last week, I think, I got a few comments saying, bloody hell, you gave it to him about um the money situation last week, the accusations about money. I want to be able to have an honest conversation with people, and I think when you give people the opportunity just to come on and not hide behind a screen, even though we are talking through screens, like when you are actually kind of face to face virtually and there's nowhere to run, it's good for them to have that out. So I hope that they do come on. Um, there we go. Mickey's changed his tune. He's no longer as tight as a duck's ass. He'll pay for it. Okay, well, Gavin, let's have a conversation about setting our price, mate, because
I'll
Mickey's
let you
gonna
know my fee.
he's gonna put his hands in. That's it.
What's the average cost
In
of
his
stamp duty now, Mickey?
very good.
Double it.
Listen, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Gavin, thanks a lot, mate, for spending the night with me again. I'm gonna miss you now.
People are going to talk, Charlie, but let's hope they're
They
talking
already
about this podcast.
indeed. All right, take care.
Bye for now.